Video today I'm going to be comparing the Conan the Barbarian franchise to the Bruce Almighty franchise. In the case of Conan the Barbarian, you have Conan the Barbarian from 1984, as well as the sequel called Conan the Destroyer with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Then 2011, a movie called Conan the Barbarian came out with different actors. I've seen the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. I haven't seen the 2011 film. Then I actually have watched both Bruce and Evan Almighty. I just watched Evan Almighty for the first time within the last few days. When it comes to highest Rotten Tomatoes score for each franchise, in the case of the Conan movies, the highest rated one is the original Conan the Barbarian. That was Arnold Schwarzenegger's first movie. Has a 67%, which isn't a bad score, but it's not all that good either with those two Almighty movies. The first one, Bruce Almighty, has the higher score, but it still only has a 48%, which I frankly think is low. Conan wins this round. And then when you look at lowest score for each franchise, in the case of those two Almighty movies, Evan Almighty has the lowest score of 24%. With the Conan franchise, that 2011 movie has the lowest score of only 25%. So literally by only 1%, Conan wins this round. Then when you look at average score, Conan has an average of 40, Almighty has an average of 36, so Conan wins this round. And then when you look at gap between lowest and highest score, with Conan you have a gap of 42. With Bruce Almighty you have a gap of 24. So Bruce Almighty wins this round because the gap is smaller. So right now, Conan actually has already won 3 rounds, meaning that Conan's already going to win this debate regardless of my personal opinion. But let's look at now, which franchise do I actually prefer? In the case of Bruce and Evan Almighty, I think that both movies are pretty entertaining. Bruce Almighty, I like that it's about this guy, Bruce, who at the beginning of the movie is clearly not very happy with his life. He's not actually very satisfied. He thinks that nothing's going his way, that God is against him. He thinks this guy, Evan Baxter, he's just a backstabbing snake who will backstab anyone to save himself. And then because Bruce complains so much, if God talks to him, is like, hey, I'm getting pretty sick of it. So now I'm going to see if you can do my job any better than I can. So he actually gives Bruce all his power and says, okay, do what you want now with only a few rules. You can't violate free will. And then Bruce starts doing all this stuff of his god powers, and at first he thinks this is great. Oh, everything's so awesome. Yes, I have this power now. Everything's gonna be perfect. And then we find out that, oh no, this guy does not know at all how to wield this level of power responsibly. And Bruce realizes he has no clue what he's doing. Especially, for example, when he realizes how many people pray. And he's like, oh man, how am I going to answer all these prayers? There's so many of them. It's all just a bunch of noise. And so he thinks, oh, if I just answer every single person on the planet's prayers with a yes, that'll make all the problems go away. Everything will be great. And then, oh no, that's actually the worst thing he could have done. It just causes the world to be in a horrible state. And then by the end of the movie, we see Bruce has changed for the better. By the final scene, you see that Bruce is clearly more happy with his life. He's content. Him and Grace are getting along better. Grace actually is happy with the way that Bruce is treating her. The two of them are going to get married by the end. Bruce also, we learn, has donated blood. There's that moment where Bruce is almost dead. He's on a hospital bed. He's just about at the point of death. So he's talking with God, and he actually makes a prayer. Hey, what I want is for Grace to have the man that she deserves. I want what's best for her. And so we see that Bruce is showing selflessness here, that he truly cares about what's best for Grace, what her needs or wants are, and thus things are actually repaired. And it comes to Evan Almighty, I actually watched this very recently. I enjoyed it. I like that we're following Evan from the first movie. He's actually a congressman, but then God tells him he wants him to build an ark, and so he basically turns this guy Evan into Noah, complete with the long hair and the robe, and putting animals onto the ark. Two of each kind of animals actually on the ark. There's even, well, a little anyway, flood that happens by the end of the movie. It's not that the whole world is flooded. No, only part of it. But there's a kind of a flood that happens. This guy, Evan, is guiding everyone into the ark. And also because of him building it, suddenly all the other people in Congress are like, wait, why is this guy, Evan, acting so weird, so strange? Why does he suddenly have all these birds in his office? No, I thought it was pretty funny. When it comes to the Conan franchise, I like those two Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. I think it's an interesting story here. I like the setting. They have this world where there's a few supernatural elements present, but not actually a ton. Just a few fantasy things are sprinkled in there. Like the way these movies look, performances. When it comes to problems with these movies, I can't really think of any. To be honest, they work pretty well for me, but I haven't actually watched the 2011 Conan movie. That doesn't actually interest me based on things I've heard about it. When it comes to which franchise do I like more than the other, I would say that I prefer Bruce Almighty and Evan Almighty. Of course, part of that is because I haven't seen all the Conan movies, only 2 of them. But also, I enjoy those Almighty films. That'll be it for this video. Actually, I like it with Conan, and you have this guy who's a wizard in the first Conan movie. There's a moment where like the dead are coming back to life, pretty sure, and then the second one you have a few creatures that show up toward the end of the movie. I think that's pretty interesting. But that'll wrap things up for this one. Bye, everyone.